welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who's going to be answering all your questions. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, all of the questions.
Yeah, I'll help.
That's a daunting task.
I'll pitch in.
All right, I'll do my best.
So this is our listener questions kind of catch-up special, right? Because due to recent events,
yes.
Let's call it the recent unpleasantness in my colon.
Part 2.
We haven't done any listener question shows for at least a month, right? And it's one of our favourite things.
It is.
So we have gathered 8 listener questions that we're going to answer. There's some US men's national team stuff, some Greg Berhalter stuff, some that isn't US national team related. All that is coming on today's show. Plus, we're hoping, we won't say his name just yet, maybe, in case he doesn't turn up. We're hoping for a special guest for the second half of the show to help us get through the questions.
Indeed. Greg Berhalter will be joining us. No, that is not going to be happening. That is not going to be happening. I doubt he'll be in Richmond anytime soon, but if he is, a standing invitation for Greg Berhalter to join us in studio.
We'll start the Greg Berhalter chair.
Okay.
We'll keep it open, but we'll let today's surprise guest sit in it.
All right.
Temporarily.
That's fair.
Keep it warm for Greg.
I'm good with that.
Okay, are you ready for the first question? You want to get straight to it?
I am. In fact, why don't I ask it? Because I feel like you're more ready for this question than I am. So I'm going to ask you this question from Danny Keene,
okay,
who would like to know, am I totally insane for thinking the United States has a reasonable chance of winning the 2026 World Cup, given that it will be mostly at home?
Not totally insane, but you should probably talk to someone.
I have totally insane no, but somewhat insane yes.
It's just so yes, the US is hosting, right? Yes, there's a whole generation of talent coming through. I think, and maybe we'll talk about this, but I think the US in 2026 will be a better team than right now and than it has been in the last few years. But there's still an elite tier of nations that wins World Cups, right? There's an elite tier of nations that wins World Cups, and the US isn't in it. And even a drastic improvement doesn't quite put you in the let's win the World Cup tier.
No,
right?
it certainly does not. Maybe I would say maybe the other wrinkle for me would be though that like with the format change, like we still don't quite know how everything's like we know how the
you
format's
still have to win
look.
games, right?
You do, but it does change things up a little bit because you've got 48 teams, but then you drop to 32 with the elimination, and like you never know how that goes. Like if you have one team that just bunkers and frustrates, some of those big teams could get knocked out.
So you think because of the new format, maybe it gives the US a better chance, or gives a non-major nation a better chance?
I have no idea. Is my answer. That's part of the reason why I'm like I was kind of back and forth on this question is because I am still of the mindset. I told you this yesterday that was like the first time I've genuinely enjoyed watching Manchester United since like 2013, probably. That it just felt like, oh, this is fun to watch. I am not yet there with the United States national team.
Not even in January? I thought January was fun.
No, I am still very much cautious in my approach to the U.S. national team. I am one who would much rather focus on let's qualify for 2022 and make sure that we're kind of back on the right track before we go worrying about 2026.
Yeah.
So that makes it harder for me to like think excitedly about 2026.
Good news is we're maybe already qualified for 2026. It's not official yet, but probably as the 80% hosts, maybe we're 80% qualified.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fair. But I guess the analogy I would draw is like, right now where we are is like if Mourinho had just been sacked and you were like, but 5 years from now, they could be really excited. They've got a lot of young players there and it could be a big thing. I'm like, yeah, it's true. But like, I also just have no idea if it's going to work out or not. I think Greg Berhalter is going to be a good coach for the national team, but this is 2 cycles away. We don't know if he sticks around. If it does go really well, maybe somebody else comes in and poaches him.
Just statistically, it's unlikely that he's the coach for 8 years, right?
I mean, who knows?
7 years.
Give him a lifetime appointment. If he's going to win 2022 and then he's there forever.
All right, but let's look at it this way. There is, like, Danny might be totally insane for thinking that the US can win the World Cup, but there is, in my opinion, reason for optimism in 2026 because of what you could call the host nation bounce. Yeah. Right? So, like, I made some notes just quickly. South Korea, semi-finalists 2002. That was rare for South Korea, right? 2002 World Cup semi-finalists while they were co-hosting, right? Mexico made the quarterfinal in 1986 when they hosted the World Cup.
I mean, I would throw out USA 1994 as a big one.
That is in my notes.
There we go.
I would also add, say, England in 1966. No coincidence, the only time they've won the World Cup is when they hosted it.
Yep.
France 98.
The one time it came home.
Yeah. How dare you? France 98, the first time they managed to win a World Cup, is at least due. It was a great team, obviously, Zidane, Vieira, etc. But it's at least in part due to hosting the World Cup and the bounce that you get from that. right? So there's that element to it.
I still think the biggest home bounce ever remains South Korea, for sure.
Yeah.
And mostly because I've seen those games again. I've seen the Italy game and the Spain game again. They got some calls.
Yes. All right. Well, maybe the US gets some calls.
Yeah.
The other reason I'd be optimistic about 2026, again, not in terms of let's win the World Cup, but let's overperform. Let's make the quarterfinals like we haven't in a long time. Let's dream of a semi-final. Is I really do think we've got a generation coming through that will be peaking around 2026. Yep. And just to give you the names, Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, all playing in the top flight of a big league. They're 19, 20 years old. They'll be about 27, 28 by the time of the 2026 World Cup. And then there's generations coming through just behind them. Josh Sargent is already playing in the Bundesliga.
This is true. And I think we had this conversation a little bit before we started going, mostly about what order we were going to answer these questions. But that was a point that you made that I think is a very good point that does kind of make a difference to me, is that in the past, the other reason why I was reticent to answer this question is because I feel like we do this, the U.S. soccer community, do this a lot, that as soon as the 2014 World Cup is over, it's who's going to be on that squad for 2018. That worked out really well. But it's this, we're constantly looking
Turns
ahead.
Out no one was the answer.
There you go. But I feel like we're constantly looking ahead with optimistic expectations.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that then becomes even Julian Green after 2014. We could say, oh, we still don't know if he deserved it, but he was with Bayern Munich, and what's going to happen?
And by 2018, he'll be a killer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And instead, he had not yet played for Bayern Munich, and that makes a big difference. Whereas with a lot of the guys you're talking about, with Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic, they've already got those reps.
They've already done it, right?
Yeah.
They're already at not the very, very top, but they're already proven elite soccer players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were at the very, very top, they would be playing for... I can't even make the joke. They'd just be playing for Man City. I can't even say Man United. Wolverhampton. It'd be Man City and Wolverhampton.
Yes.
That's what they should all be.
Maybe one day I'll take all three of them. I'd happily take all three of them.
Did you see there was a debate about if Chelsea fell off, if Wolves could replace them as one of the big six? That if Chelsea had that ban and then kind of things crumbled, if Abramovich ended up wanting to sell, that Wolves might be the next team to step in. Have you heard anything about that?
No.
Yeah, that seems to be a recurring. I've had 3 different people ask me if you have thoughts on that.
I mean, that's an optimistic take on what's going to happen with Wolves as well, right? It assumes that the graph has been going up recently, and it just assumes continued upwards trajectory of that graph.
That's how it works.
So this is not what I can't believe we're talking about Wolves here, but there's a possibility something goes weird in the Chinese economy. Fosun International has some business problems or falls out with the Chinese premier, and suddenly Wolves are in trouble, right? There's a lot of reasons why it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
For the same reason Abramovich might end up
I like that
parting ways with Chelsea.
I like that you're concerned about the Chinese economy and falling out with the premier, and yet you're but this 17-year-old coming through, he's definitely going to be the next big thing.
Just to give people the ages as well, because I don't like projecting forwards, but once I started doing it, it was tempting it was hard to stop.
I feel like you're about to project forwards literally and figuratively, because we're going to talk some Josh Sargent here.
No, we're going to talk defenders. Okay. So if you think of Brooks and Miazga right now, in 2026, Matt Miazga will be 30-ish. And Brooks will be
30-ish? What does that mean?
I'm not sure if he'll be 30 or 31.
Okay.
And John Brooks will be 32 or 33. So you have a grizzled centre-back pair there, ready to go in 2026.
All right.
More realistically, there'll be someone else coming through.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah. I mean, but you could still have, decent chance that you have Zach Steffen still as your goalkeeper in 2026 if he ends up becoming the number 1 overall. If Bill Hamid has anything to say about it, we'll see. I can't even talk about Brad Guzan because Bill Hamid says we can't.
Again, just because I'm optimistic, I still think a great World Cup performance from the US, there's still going to be a tier 1 nation that gets it right and comes ready to play. And I say that because that's what's happened in the last few World Cups, right? Italy 2006, Spain 2010, Germany 2014, France 2018.
Yeah.
It seems that every World Cup, there's an elite nation that comes and they've got it down, they've got it ready to go. And even with Pulisic top of his game and a few good youngsters coming through for the US and home nation bounce, if there's a team like that, it's still unstoppable even for US with a big crowd behind them. Yeah. That's why it's not reasonable to expect them to win the World Cup.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want a list of reasons why it's not reasonable to expect the United States to win the World Cup, that I could give you in slightly more detail.
Have you got any more?
About why they will or won't?
Yeah.
I mean, I think one reason why they might is because I feel like at that point, England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland will be doing their own thing from behind a wall of sorts. So maybe that's just more spaces that open up.
Like in Children of Men.
Yes, exactly. Or V for Vendetta, I think.
I'm kind of scared to watch that film again because I think the early scenes of how things went wrong kind of track.
Yeah, other than that isn't. I don't think this is a spoiler, but there's no more babies, right? Isn't that part of the problem?
That's
okay.
the opener.
So at least that hasn't happened yet.
But that's more like
we know that's not the case because we're talking about young players who could play in 2026.
Yes,
there we go.
They've already been born. There.
Hooray!
But just to clarify, that's like a metaphor for everything that's gone wrong with the world. In Children of Men.
All right, film scholar. Just because you got. Did you get your master's in film?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, fancy. I would make a glasses gesture, but you're literally wearing glasses, so that kind of defeats the purpose.
Okay, should we move on from the US winning the World Cup in 2026?
Sure.
Yeah?
Let's do it.
Let's go to Michael Spinelli's question. Michael Spinelli wants to know, or says, I always phrase this right. Michael Spinelli says, it seems like a lot of English players have hyphenated last names. So examples, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Kyle Walker-Peters.
There we go.
Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Is that more common in England than in the USA, or is it a special soccer thing?
Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Yeah, we can keep going.
I love the idea that it might be a special soccer thing.
I mean, yes. Obviously, it's how you know that you have an elite player is when they've got the double barrel name, is I think what I've seen it referred to as. Obviously, I am the one to speak to this since we're talking about naming rituals in England.
Yeah.
I would say there's two explanations that I've seen. Historically, it's that you show that two families have united. That could be because they were like warring families or didn't like each other, and now you're showing, they've unified.
Yeah.
Or you just don't want to lose the name.
Like the Hamid Ghazans.
Of course, that exact one. That's how they're going to rectify that situation. But more recently, I think as marriage rates have not necessarily gone way down, but just declined, that I think it's more common for people to have kids out of wedlock. That makes it sound like I disapprove. I do not. But I think with that comes then if you don't have sort of like the marriage to connect it, then sometimes parents will opt for we want both names in there, and you can go that way. But I mean, it's married couples do the same as well. But I think I say that just to say that it's not, sadly, it is not a like, we want like gender equality or anything like that. There's not some like feminist tilt to it as far as I understand.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know the data and I don't know the reasons for it, but I just do know there are more kids in England with hyphenate names or double barrel names.
Yes.
Now, I do have anecdotal data to your kids out of wedlock thing. My sister, really good example. She has been with the same guy for a long time. They got a house. They got 2 kids, all very happy. Not married.
Yeah.
And it's just not weird in England for people to do that. I've got a lot of friends that have done the exact same thing. For some reason, there's not as much pressure to get married before you have kids.
It is a thing. This is slightly like
a lot of Catholics wagging their finger at the Church of England now.
It's not. I'll be honest and say, like, full disclosure here. I was having this conversation with my brother-in-law the other day because there's like some people we know who are trying to have a baby and they're not married, and it was a weird. Like, my first question was like, are they thinking about getting married? And I don't know why, because I genuinely don't care. But it is a weird, like, institutionalized thing in my head of like, oh, well, that if you're going to do that, then you're going to do the other thing. But I know plenty of folks here in Richmond who have. They just, we have kids. We've been together for 8 years, and that's how we're going to do it.
So why is it less common in the US to do the hyphenate?
I don't think it is.
I think if you look at, say, the US national team roster, the list of names, I'm not sure there's any hyphenates. Everyone's just got the one name.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that.
Which I assume is where Michael Spinelli's question comes from, right? If you look at English players, you look at American players, you can see all the hyphenates and all the non-hyphenates. The most famous soccer player in the US who's a hyphenate is probably Bradley Wright Phillips, and he's English.
This is completely me just speculating. I may be wildly incorrect with this one, but maybe one explanation is just that it's more population density in a like smaller space, more people in England, or fewer people, obviously, but it's like. What, maybe a tenth of the population? What is it, like 50, 60 million in England?
Yeah, it's about 60 million.
Yeah, and significantly more than that here in the United States is what I would say. So maybe I wonder if it's maybe just
330 million in the US.
If say it's like an equal percentage in the United States and England have double barrel names. That means you're going to have more in the United States, but it's going to be a little bit more spread, maybe, is I guess what I'm trying to say, versus it's like if a trend catches on in England, I imagine it catches on faster.
I think actually trend is probably the right word.
That's what I was trying to get at. Thank you.
It makes it sound lightweight, but I think maybe a custom is more like it. Like people started doing it, and there are a lot of people in the public eye, like soccer players, with hyphenate names. So it doesn't become a weird thing to do it, right? So people are just more comfortable doing it. And for whatever reason, that has happened in the UK and it hasn't happened in the US. And that's why they're going to have to make the letters smaller on soccer shirts in the Premier League.
The other trend that has, I think, started more so, or like I've heard of it a little bit more in the United States, maybe happening in England as well, is the portmanteau. last name, which is an interesting one. So
that's more common here than in the UK, I think.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I saw a Reddit post about this, and somebody was saying that Oxlade-Chamberlain should just be Oxlane, and I was like, that is a good name. That's a good name. That's a good name.
Oh, just another example. My wife didn't take my name.
There you go.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot that.
I was wondering if we were going to get
there. I forgot that very close to home example.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we had kids, we probably would have done a hyphenate.
Yeah, and it's also why I am Taylor Grove O'Neill. Keeping them both.
The paperwork for that was crazy.
Yeah. I think I made you sign it, but that's official now. I'm Taylor Grove O'Neill Rockwell.
Yeah, you said this is a TSS advertising document.
Yes.
Just sign this. Yeah, I never saw it coming.
Yes, it's also why I'm lifetime president.
Speaking of ads, before we get to more questions, today's show is sponsored by Robinhood.
Yeah, it is.
Not the guy from Nottingham, but the investing app, all one word, Robinhood, that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. Don't you dare pay commission. Use Robinhood. It's commission-free.
There you go. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, there's no commission with Robinhood, so you're good to go there. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level, which is nice because I do feel like sometimes there's this idea like, if I want to get into buying stocks and stuff, I have to spend lots of money. I like the idea of just buying minimal ones to see how it goes, to get your feet wet, to see if you can know if you're good at it or not, or if you want to continue with it.
Yeah, you don't have to invest like 5 figures, right? You can just get a little taste.
And Robinhood can help you with that. They can help you learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. You can discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications. So, again, it makes it that much easier, that much more accessible. I tried once because I had a stock that is had been acquired and acquired and acquired. So it was like a Bell Atlantic or Bell Pacific Bell. It was Pacific Bell. And I was like, is this even a company anymore? Turns out Verizon. But I had to do a bunch of Googling.
Pacific Bell is now Verizon.
It's I think they were acquired by, it's one of those.
I see.
In the same way that if you had Wachovia stock, I think you now have Wells Fargo stock. I
had a Wachovia banking card and I now have a Wells Fargo banking card.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, never mind. That's another sidetrack thing. But I was looking at my Wells Fargo member since, and I was like, I was not a member with Wells Fargo since 1989. That's how it gets acquired. But yeah, so they make it very easy, basically, so you can do all that stuff without having to do a bunch of Googling and figuring out and sending in certificates and all that other stuff.
Yep.
Robinhood makes it that much simpler.
I mean, I was ready to buy stock in all of the 2026 World Cup teams.
You clearly were.
Sounds like you weren't.
I was not because it's not legal.
I guess we'll see. We'll see who performs better in 2026.
Because I'm not a crazy person who's going to get the Robinhood app and be like, how do I buy Weston McKinney stock? Is this a thing? How do I do it?
Give me 100 Weston McKinneys.
It's like the Family Guy, waffles, tasty waffles. Daryl's going to go in and demand Weston McKinney's on the floor of the stock exchange.
So obviously none of that was actual stock advice because you can't buy Weston McKinney's.
You cannot.
Well, it sounds like you should, right? It's a good name for something.
It feels weird.
Yeah.
It feels weird.
Get me the McKinneys.
All right.
But if you do want to start investing, start building your portfolio. Do it with Robinhood. You go to soccer.robinhood.com, where Robinhood is giving listeners to the Total Soccer Show a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint. So one of the ones you know, not one of the Weston McKinney ones, to help you build your portfolio. Once again, sign up at soccer.robinhood.com.
Thank you very much to Robinhood for sponsoring today's episode. Shall we answer some more questions, Mr. Grove?
Yes, please. Let's do that.
All right. I think it's my turn to ask. Chris Jackson asks, will Michael Bradley become the most capped U.S. men's player when he retires? And will Josie Altidore be the USMNT leading goal scorer when he retires?
So he did send some data, right? Chris sent a little data. Bradley right now has 143 caps. The all-time leader, I actually haven't checked this data, so I'm just assuming that Chris's data is good.
Oh, let's hope so.
Kobe Jones with 164 caps.
Okay.
So what, he is 20.
He needs 22 to overtake.
22 to overtake. Josie Altidore has 41 goals, which is a lot of international goals.
It is.
And both Dempsey and Donovan have 57 goals. Yep. So he needs 16 goals.
17 to overtake.
17 to overtake. Okay, yeah, thank you for correcting me on that. So I think Bradley could do it.
I agree.
Because, what did we say, 22 caps? If he plays in the Gold Cup, that's automatically 6 games in the actual Gold Cup, a couple games before. That's 8 caps just this summer.
It depends on how much he plays because, they can swap out after the group stage.
Yeah, that was always a Klinsmann thing though, right? I never liked it.
Well, we'll see. Because, in 2015 he played 6. In 2017 he played 3 in the Gold Cup. So I think basically here's what I think with Michael Bradley. I have it as I think so, but I think he'll need help because his best numbers in terms of appearances by year, 2015 he had 18, 2016 17, 2017 14. But a lot of that is Gold Cup and Copa America and World Cup qualifying. I think the same goes for Josie Altidore. They'll both need to be heavily involved in the early stages of qualifying if they want to meet that level. I think if there is a 2020 Copa America,
that's what I was going to say.
That
I think
definitely
that's
helps.
big. Yeah.
So, and I think...
Unless we only get 3 games in it.
But I still think... Yeah, true. But I still think it probably is, of the two, Michael Bradley is the more likely to overtake, because I think if you did have a 2020 Copa, if he is involved in qualifying, and if he gets a number of games of the 2019 Gold Cup, then I think it pushes him within reach. Then I think it comes down to, does Greg Berhalter like him? And I mean that sincerely.
So far he seems to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reason to think that Bradley's going to get at least another 22 caps. Because again, he's only 31 or so? This is not 37-year-old Michael Bradley.
31, 32 in July.
There we go. So there's time for him to pick up another 22 caps. He's also such a big figure in US soccer. He may get ceremonial games at the end or something like that.
That's literally what I mean when I say if Greg Berhalter likes him, is if they have a falling out and Berhalter wants nothing to do with him.
Iced. You've been iced, Bradley.
And he needs 5 more appearances. Maybe Berhalter thinks I'm not so inclined. But if he really likes him and they enjoy each other's company, maybe he thinks, I want him to get those 5. I'll give him 5 minutes here and 8 minutes there so that he gets that next level cap.
I also wouldn't be. I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if he does it even without going to the 2022 World Cup. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Bradley gets to a stage where he's kind of half phased out of the team, but he's still on the roster.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So he could be someone who plays 1 or 2 games at the 2022 World Cup.
Yeah. I mean, I think similar to Kobe Jones near the end of his career. That was the thing we saw with Kobe Jones, subbing in the 17 minutes here and 15 minutes there. I could see that happening with Bradley. For Josie, it feels like more of a reach.
17 goals is a lot.
It is, especially when you look at, 2018, not a good year for Michael Bradley or Josie Altidore. Josie Altidore scored 0 goals for the national team in 2018. He scored 4 in 2017.
Wait, he barely played in 2018.
I know.
Yeah, I see.
But it is the case, though, that even in his best return ever for the national team was 2013. He had 8. Usually it's closer to 4 to 6 goals per year is about where he is. A lot of those coming in the early stages of World Cup qualifying. And I say all that just to say that if he's averaging, say, 5 to 6 goals a year, and he's got to get 17, and that 5 to 6 is generous, that's at least 3 more years, maybe 4 more years. Josie Altidore, I think he's, 29 thereabouts? Yeah. So it's possible, but it requires him to be the main striker, and I think that there are more players coming through.
There's competition, right?
Exactly.
I know Berhalter likes him, because he even got him into the squad, into camp, just to catch up with everybody, and as a reminder that sends a message, right? That Berhalter is a Josie fan and plans to use him.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee that Josie's going to be the uncontested starting striker for the US national team for the next few years. I actually think if he is, he would probably hit those 17 goals over the next 4 or 5 years, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
I don't think so either. And just to clarify the reason why, because that's the exact same thing we just said about Michael Bradley. Yeah. The difference being, though, that we're talking about caps for Michael Bradley versus goals for Josie Altidore.
Yeah, and caps you can come on 10 minutes and you get something to put on your head.
1 minute you get a cap. Yeah. That's how it works.
1 minute you can get a goal, but it's less likely.
The wrinkle that I would say for Josie Altidore is that there have been talks that they're going to change the way World Cup qualifying works for the 2022 World Cup for CONCACAF, because they're also talking about changing the name of CONCACAF. We'll see if that ever happens. But there was some speculation that it was basically just going to be
CONCACAF. I've heard it.
Oh God, that did not go well. But if they did a 10-team just group and everybody plays each other twice or something like that over the course of 3 years,
like a CONMEBOL style.
Exactly. So then suddenly, if the United States is playing Antigua and Barbuda twice, maybe Josie Altidore gets more goals there, because as I said, that's when he tends to not that that's only who he only scores against, but
fill your boots.
Yeah, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I think he got 3 in 2 games.
There's a story with Josie as well. If he'd been less unlucky or more lucky, I guess is one way of phrasing that, with injuries, he'd also have more goals, and he'd have more goals at big tournaments as well. You remember him lasting 20 minutes of the 2014 World Cup, as an example?
Yeah, he had 4 goals in 2014 in a World Cup year. I mean, and 0 in 2012, I think, for similar reasons.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely injuries playing a massive part there. Also, probably why he didn't get any minutes in 2018, or very few minutes in 2018.
Oh, one final thing I want to add to this. We mentioned the Gold Cup coming this summer, sorry. There's possibly Copa America the summer after that. Then there's probably another Gold Cup the summer after that. There is a lot of chance to get lots of things to put on your head and put the ball in the back of the net. If you're in Berhalter's team, there's going to be a lot of games in the next few years, because there's a lot of summer tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down...
I guess hopefully one in November, December in 2022.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. But I think it just, for me, comes down to how involved is he? How much is he that favorite striker? Or is it, we're playing one striker, it's going to be Bobby Wood, or it's going to be Josh Sargent. Maybe Jordan Morris has a return to form, and suddenly Jordan Morris is in there. It just feels like there are a lot of options there for who could score goals for the national team. Yeah. And it's not necessarily Josie Altidore front and center for me. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a harder ask for him to get to that point.
So we're saying Bradley more likely to become the all-time cap leader than Josie to catch or surpass Donovan or Dempsey.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I feel like we've answered that correctly. I'm going to give us a check mark for that.
Okay, I'm glad we're getting a check mark from Daryl. Self-administered.
You ready for the next question?
Sure.
Billy Harding. Billy Harding wants to know, when watching a game tactically, which is kind of the only way we watch games these days, right? When watching a game tactically, what keys do you focus on to determine a team's style of play? For example, a midfield triangle versus a flat midfield.
That is not what I look for. Is my answer to that.
There are two different things here, right? So maybe we should clarify the two different things.
Here's how I go ahead and clarify, and then I'll answer.
I would say the midfield triangle versus the flat midfield, we're talking about shape.
Yeah.
Whereas style of play, I would think of as something different. So I think maybe to cover our bases, we should kind of answer both.
Well, here's what I'll say is like I looked at it like this: is that I try to understand formation and shape, not necessarily to understand what
those being the same thing, formation and shape.
Yes, to me, but not necessarily to see like what they're doing tactically or what their approach to the game is, but more so because I want that baseline of where are these people supposed to be located within their like kind of formation game plan, and then I can look and be like, oh, the right back is now overlapping the right midfielder, and the central defensive midfielder is now the right back.
Right.
So you can sort of
the
see
shape is the starting point for the style.
Exactly. Yeah. So then I can see like, oh, okay, they're shifting this around. That must be part of their tactical approach. So the shape doesn't necessarily tell me what they're doing, but what they do from that shape, I guess, is what I try to look for.
All right, so let's go piece by piece with this then. So if we take the second part of Billy's question kind of at face value, if you're looking for a midfield triangle versus a flat midfield, how do you notice that?
I mean, isn't it just that they're in the shape of a triangle versus... I mean, I don't mean this to be like...
Yeah, but remember, we watched Man United PSG yesterday, and the commentators were confused about whether Man United were in a back five or a back four. So it's not always that easy to know someone's shape. So what's a way of determining the shape?
Well, I guess I feel like you're looking at, in my opinion, you're looking at like an exception and using that as the rule, whereas I'm saying, generally speaking, I feel like you can see the shape roughly.
Yeah.
And so that kind of is my answer to that question, I guess, that I can see is like, oh, they're in a 4-4-2 diamond because those four guys are in a diamond.
Okay. I would say, if it might be easier for us because we do it a lot, I would say use the pause button on your DVR.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Yeah, how do you see it?
Set pieces. It is restarts are usually the easiest one. That's where if you see a person, say the forward is trying to, this is like a long way of explaining it, but say your forward is trying to get like the ball at the center back, fouls that center back. So now there's a free kick, center back's going to take it 30 yards from his own goal. Usually you will see the opposition team drop into their basic shape because that's the easiest way to reset themselves.
So to clarify, non-goal threat set pieces.
Exactly.
Because obviously a corner kick, it's madness, right? Everybody's in the box.
Exactly.
But yeah, like if the opposition has a free kick.
Or offside. Offside is a good one.
Yeah, free kick like the edge of the opposition area, you reset into your shape. That's a great time to pause the TV and essentially count the defenders, count the midfielders, count the forwards.
Substitutions as well. When a player is coming off, you'll usually see people kind of default back to where they know they're supposed to be, their areas of priority or what's responsibility. There it is.
Best one for me, kickoff.
Yep, that makes sense too.
It's the best one because they both line up in their shape.
Unless it's the U.S. women's national team and they have 7 runners at midfield ready to go.
Yes.
That makes it slightly harder to
understand.
Not
that, and not when Juan Carlos Osorio is coaching because he's a trickster.
Yeah, but I think that this is definitely true. I think another thing that helps me understand what they're doing, what the team might be trying to do tactically from a formation standpoint is where the goalkeeper's like average position is. If the goalkeeper is routinely 30 yards outside of his or her goal, you can kind of bank that team is playing very aggressive or is banking on having lots of possession against a bunkered opponent, because otherwise you're not going to be playing 30 yards from your own goal with the ball 50 yards from your goal. That wouldn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah, otherwise you're very much in the
you're in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
So this moves us on to like the style of play, right? And maybe more what the actual tactics are. And I would use a similar thing. I always look for the line of confrontation. So when the opposition defenders have the ball, they're moving it around, centre-back's passing it to centre-back. The team that you're trying to look for their style, are they waiting at the halfway line or are they all up in your face in a full-on press? I think that's a really good time to tell what that team's trying to do.
And then I would add a wrinkle in there. There's another thing that I look for. So yes, there's like the sitting back, then there's the all up in their face. And the other one that I think is really helpful for knowing, because I do think if you believe that the forward is the first defender, basically, looking at what are the center forwards doing. Are they trying to block off the opposition's like double pivot in a 4-2-3-1? Are
Which
they
is
not
what
pressing?
Rashford and Lukaku were doing for PSG.
If you're basically standing between the guy with the ball and the two central midfielders, you can rest assured that the defensive game plan then is, okay, we don't want them playing through the middle. We don't want them playing through these two players. We want them to go wide.
Actually, that's a really important one, right? Because you can see forwards can be quite high in terms of pressing, but are they pressing the ball? Like, are they trying to get the ball off the centre-backs? Or are they just going to prevent the pass to the two central midfielders? We're saying the same thing.
We
right?
are indeed.
Yeah.
One thing, one word of caution that I think I do a lot more than you do, and you're very good about being like, well, let's hold on, is that...
Ooh, tell me more about this.
I will very often be like, oh, they've switched to a back five. Or like, this guy switched with this person. Or, oh, they're moving this around. And a lot of times that's just like, oh, no, they got caught in a counter. And the central midfielder dropped in for 1 second, or the center back got caught out and the central midfielder filled it, and that's not like a deliberate switch. And there are times when I will be like, oh no, they've definitely done that, and then 30 seconds later they go right back to like a 4-4-2. And I'm like, oh, never mind.
So it's just a temporary fill-in. Which happens a lot, right? Especially like after set pieces or something like that.
But
like, sometimes Luka Modric will try and play right back.
Try being the operative word there. But again, that's where it goes back to me for what is their basic starting position or like area of the field that you know they're going to be in. And then if Daryl Grove is my holding midfielder and then I see him maybe further up the field than I would have expected, that's a thing where I'll like...
Gasping for air.
But I'll try to note that and I'll say like, okay, he's up there now. Let me check back in a couple minutes. And then if I check back in a couple minutes and you're back in that holding midfield spot, then I'll know, oh, it was probably just kind of like a one-time outlier situation. Whereas if I keep seeing you up the field, then it's a pattern as opposed to an outlier.
I wrote that word in my notes. Patterns.
Yeah.
Look for patterns. So patterns in terms of positional stuff like you were just talking about, like players going up the field and coming back. But also the big thing for me is patterns in terms of what do teams do when they have the ball, right? Are they going quite direct down a certain channel and they're just hitting that channel every time and there's a winger running after it? If so, then that's the style, that's the plan, right? Are they being really careful with possession and prioritising don't lose the ball, like, say, a Frank de Boer team does? Like, you can, I mean, I'm kind of joking because I know they had a bad result last night, but when you watch a Frank de Boer team, you see that they prioritise possession and just hold on to the ball no matter what. Louis van Gaal teams often did the same sort of thing, right? So you can tell by how many risks does a team take with the ball. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to force something, or are they just trying to hold on to the ball? And then there's a spectrum in between.
As a teaser, that's the first of what will be 2 Louis van Gaal references on today's show.
Is that right?
More from Louis van Gaal later on.
Oh, we should never publish this show.
We probably should. We probably should not, no.
Anything else to answer Billy's question?
No, I mean, I think that's
another check mark for us.
Yeah, sure. I just think that like this is a thing that you and I have like learned to do over years.
Yes,
it is not a thing that we just like inherently knew how to do, and it's certainly not a thing that like I would even say I know how to do well still. Like, I genuinely doubt myself every time. Like, when we're watching...
I think that's healthy, though. I think that's good. I really do, because it makes you ask questions, and then you double-check your work, and you're not just like, oh, I know what they're doing, and then you go down a path that turns out to be wrong, but then you're dug so far in, and then you're just Piers Morgan.
But true. But it goes back to, first of all, you never want to be Piers Morgan. I feel like Piers Morgan doesn't even want to be Piers Morgan.
It's too late for him.
And Piers Morgan wants to be Donald Trump. But I guess what I mean is, like, if you push yourself to be like, is this actually what's happening? Let me keep watching. Let me try to figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
I do think that's a better approach than like, oh no, this is what they're doing and I'm sure that's what's happening. Because as soon as you're sure what's happening, you stop looking at the nuances and then suddenly you're convinced that Manchester United were in a back three when they were not.
Yeah. All right. More questions to come, and hopefully our special guest will arrive soon.
And hopefully fewer Manchester United references. I promise people.
I mean,
I promise.
If it was up to me, there wouldn't be.
You know, I don't promise. Because I don't promise things that I can't guarantee.
More US men's national team talk.
That I can promise.
That. Today's show is sponsored by Hims.
Hims is a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness for men. And on that last point, sexual performance issues are far more common than people might think.
Because people don't talk about them.
They don't. And that's a big thing. They don't talk about it because it is embarrassing. And I still blame sitcoms. Sitcoms make us think that, like, sitcoms has given us a completely distorted understanding of what, like, sex lives are supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't really like TV sitcoms for that reason. That's a side note. But I say all that because it's also the case that then it gives you this idea that there's a stigma about talking to doctors. And I recently had this talking to my doctor where I thought I was, like, going to be gross. And then I realized, like, no, he hears way worse stuff than this all the time.
I've spent the last 2 months talking to multiple doctors and nurses about my colon.
Yeah, exactly.
And my bowel movements.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you really, once you learn to get over it, you get over it fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if
because you want to know, right? Something's wrong, you want to know.
You do. But if it's difficult to get over, which it is, or if it's just not something that like you feel comfortable doing, that's where HIMSS comes in. Because again, talking about ED can be an embarrassing thing. It can be challenging. It can be difficult. I said this, I think, on one of the ad reads I did by myself. But like, if you have to call, there's nothing more awkward than calling. Like the when you call your doctor's office and the person answers and like, what's the purpose of this appointment? I'm always
medical
just like,
stuff,
medical things,
doctor things.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I have a foot thing, I guess. I don't know. So, but you don't have to deal with that because there's no waiting room. There's no awkward in-person visits.
With HIMSS.
HIMSS connects you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat ED.
And then once you talk to the doctor, you get a prescription, and then it comes to your door.
Yep.
And then away you go.
Yep, and what comes to your door is not snake oil. It's not gas station counter supplements. And you don't have to talk to the gas station counter person either. So there you go. It all works out very well.
It's actual, proper medical stuff. It's the generic equivalent of well-known brands.
There we go. So try HIMSS for a month today for just $5. We'll get you started for just $5 while supplies last. See the website for full details. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy.
So go to forhims.com/totalsoccered. That's forhims.com/totalsoccered. And third time lucky, forhims.com/totalsoccered. The link, of course, will be in the show notes. So if you didn't write that down or you didn't memorize it, you can go to our show notes and you can click that link.
You sure can. Thank you to HIMSS for sponsoring today's episode. And now we're going to go take a moment to see if our special guest is waiting outside. We hope that he is.
And he was. I went and got him. It's Adam Snavely, a.k.a. Snaves. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's me.
Excuse me? It's a.k.a. the Baron Lord Snavington? Is that what we went with?
That was the agreed-upon title.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, get us together.
I wasn't here for that.
Get us together. And I'm very happy you're here. We didn't mean for this to be the case, but as I was driving in to record this episode, I was listening to the most recent Hooligans, where they were reading reviews, which featured one from a certain Adam Snavely, who said, "Have me on your show, you cowards."
I believe the title of it was "Bring Me on Your Show, You Cowards," or something like that. And then I said, they were like Walmart brand Arsenal fan TV was the official I
think they took it as a compliment.
They did. They took it well. They took it well. They're like,
Walmart's a big company.
That was their point.
I think he knows our brand. I think he's doing well. So that's good. Yeah, no.
But I just enjoyed that, like, you put that challenge. It just felt very serendipitous that you put that challenge out. And then I heard it the day that you were coming on our show in person. It really works out well.
You know, I'm here to take over the podcast. You guys, if anybody needs a serial podcast crasher around here, I'm here. Just send me an email, send me a Twitter DM. I'm on Twitter far too much as it is. Just let me know. I won't always.
Can we be your agents? We'll take 10%.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Yeah. Well, finder's fee. Yeah. No, I can't promise that I'll always sound like this. The lovely Virginia weather is doing my voice in currently.
Yeah. We were comparing you earlier to Phoebe from Friends.
Yeah.
You got the blues voice.
Yeah, I do.
You got blues Snaves.
Kind of,
Did you mean to do that on purpose, knowing what this office used to be called? Do you remember who used to be here?
No. Oh, Smelly Cat Productions.
Smelly Cat Productions.
Yes.
So you used to be in this office before.
Forgot about that.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah, which was a fun time to be on the elevator to have the person randomly be like, "Are you guys the Smelly Cat people?" I was like, "I don't know what you mean, and I'm not going to dignify that with a response."
No. That's when you say yes. Yes, we are the Smelly Cat people.
I went full Lucille Bluth.
But we're working on it.
I don't understand the question, and I refuse to respond. Is basically where I went with it.
Is that? Would you like fries with that?
Yes.
All right. Should we get to? Now we've proved we're not cowards by having Snaves on the show. Excuse me, the Baron Lord.
Boston your court, Cooligans, is all I'm saying.
Should we get to answering some more listener questions?
I suppose we should.
We've saved 4 just for Adam. Okay. You guys ready for this next one?
Sure.
It's from Alexander King. Hypothetical scenario that may never play out this season. Pulisic is dribbling down the wing. Tyler Adams is closing to make the challenge. Who comes out with the ball?
I took the cop-out answer here, and I went with the idea that if Pulisic is on the ball, he's dribbling down the wing. Tyler Adams has been more central and usually on the opposite side of the midfield as Pulisic.
Oh, like right center.
So then, like, Tyler Adams is basically having to, like, put out a fire in that moment. There's no way that was like a natural lineup where they're matching up against each other. So then it's basically him reacting, Pulisic being proactive. So I'm giving the advantage to Pulisic.
Interesting. All right, Snaves, you've seen a lot more of Dortmund than we have this year.
This is true.
You're essentially a Dortmund fan, right?
I am a Dortmund fan.
Yeah. So I would argue Pulisic could end up on the left wing just because it's one of the few positions he's allowed to play. late sub for Brun Larsen.
No, I think that you can sub him in for Brun Larsen or for Rafael Guerrero, and he'll definitely be in that position. He plays left wing. He hasn't played left wing as much under Lucien Favre.
So Taylor's right.
But it's definitely not outside of the realm of possibility for him.
So what happens if Adams is coming for him?
Tyler Adams gets that ball.
Why'd you say that?
Tyler Adams is I think one time I described him as it's like somebody started a chainsaw and then just let it go. No.
By the way, that's not how you're supposed to use a chainsaw, just to be very clear.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever used one before. Daryl. Don't do that.
I have professionally used a chainsaw, and I can assure you that is not what they tell you to do. No, Tyler Adams is, for me, watching him, he's just so good at so many different things, like positionally, one-on-one, and he's kind of like has this almost robotic consistency to like how good he is at just
like a chainsaw with AI.
Yeah, like how good he is at approaching challenges, angles, and all this stuff.
You're describing a Terminator at this point. It's a robot who can destroy you and can be let loose.
Yeah,
I'm a little concerned.
He's a tiny Terminator.
He's a tiny Terminator that also rocks the Off-White Jordan collabs. I see you, Tyler Adams. You're dripping. That's cool. But compared to Pulisic's take on like completion percentage, which is not good in general. Is
that just this year?
It's good. No, like in general. Specifically, it was last year because there were a bunch of graphics because he was like in the top 5 of like total take-ons attempted.
Yeah.
Of like anybody in the top 5 leagues, but his like completion or his success rate was like way lower than the rest of them. And I think that's a little bit true of Pulisic, especially when you see him in the Bundesliga. He is somebody that he goes and he loves a 1v1. He loves taking on defenders. He does it a lot. It doesn't always come off for him. And it's very much kind of like if it did come off for him, if Christian Pulisic's like success rate with all of his take-ons was like anywhere near like Kylian Mbappe, people would be talking about Christian Pulisic like they talk about Kylian Mbappe. Like that's the difference between the two of them. So if Tyler Adams comes up to Christian Pulisic, Tyler Adams, who is just turned 20 years old, jumped from MLS and is like, oh yeah, I'm just going to start in the Bundesliga now. It's not a big deal.
It's going to chainsaw the Bundesliga.
Yeah. It's average. Yeah, I think Tyler Adams. I'll say this: if you put him up 10 times, if you tell him they like do it 10 times, I think Tyler Adams gets that ball at least 6 out of 10 times.
I would sign off on that. Yeah, and I think especially you never see Adams left for dead, right? So even if Pulisic goes by him, Adams is coming back for another bite, and he's coming back, and he's coming back, and he's coming back.
I would actually be very, very interested to see like Christian Pulisic and Tyler Adams just do like some sprints, like some agility drills or something like that, because both of them have like pretty insane bursts. There was a year or two ago where it was actually revealed that Christian Pulisic, like Dortmund put it out, Christian Pulisic's like acceleration time was actually faster than Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's.
That's decent.
That's a pretty good benchmark to go off of.
I do wonder, if you had them going against each other, who do you think learns faster about is it like a defender learns more about like the attacker's like inclinations and intent, or is it the attacker who maybe figures out what the defender likes to do more? Or do you think it's just a case-by-case basis?
I think it's case-by-case. And it depends how, for me, like when I'm a defender, it depends how complicated the striker is, right? If it's a guy with one move, maybe you get beat once by that one move, you see them try that exact same thing again, and you stop it. You're like, oh, you've just got this one thing.
But for the obvious purposes of this conversation, if that attacker is Christian Pulisic and that defender were, say, Tyler Adams.
How many things does Christian Pulisic have? That's the interesting thing, right? Like, you don't see a lot of like crazy skill moves from Christian Pulisic. It's a lot of basically cut and accelerate, right?
It's very classic winger stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's very much like cut one way, cut the other way. a dip of the shoulder, little head fakes here and there.
Yeah.
That's usually his go-to stuff. You don't see.
Oh, I want to see this now. I want to see this now.
You don't see like a Neymar kind of like we're gonna play with the step overs. We're gonna drag the ball along with the foot. Like we'll see what happens there. And Christian Pulisic is much more in the mold of like some of these more classic wingers that was just kind of like zigzaggy.
So you're saying Tyler Adams?
Yes. Also, I want to add on current form, absolutely Tyler Adams. That's the fair way to look at
you
this,
and your
right?
wrinkles and caveats. Christian Pulisic all the way. I will not be deterred.
All right, all right. Well, the bad news for everybody is that this is not happening.
No, it's not.
Because Dortmund and Leipzig have already played each other twice this year. The most recent game was in August and then in January. In January, they were both on the bench. Pulisic came on. Adams didn't come on.
And then the next game, Adams started.
My argument.
Yep. So it could have happened that game. It did not. Dortmund are out of the DFB Pokal, so they can't meet there either. And then Pulisic's on his way in the summer, so we're not going to see this.
Quick question, though. In that game where Pulisic came on, did he get the ball?
I can't remember.
Oh, we're going to assume that he at least touched the ball once. Did Tyler Adams get the ball from him when he got that ball? He did not, therefore Christian Pulisic wins.
Oh, I'm going to go and find footage of him running into the sideline, into Adams.
I don't like that idea. I don't like that idea at all. In fact, I dislike it so much that I feel like we should move on to the next question.
Let's do it.
All right.
Your turn to ask.
Next question comes from Matt Koss, who asks, who is the most underrated U.S. men's national team player of the last decade?
Oh, this is quite the question.
I had like a gut answer to this, and then I had a research thought out answer to this.
Ooh. All right.
What was your gut answer?
My gut answer was Alejandro Bedoya. Because that is one who like
because we kept forgetting him.
We kept forgetting him. There's like 3 different like Gold Cup or like January or like whatever like March camp like roster like review shows that we would do where we would be driving. I would be driving home and I would get a text from Daryl. It was like we forgot to talk about Bedoya again. Like we kind of forgot about him, but I think it's because he did so many different roles or was asked to do so many different things for the national team. Sometimes it worked out well. Other times when he was playing defensive midfielder against Brazil, it didn't. And I think that like kind of is what stands out in my head. But then when I go further into it and look at how many games he did play and how many roles he fulfilled.
Yeah,
even
right mid, left mid, centre
player,
mid, attacking mid. Yeah, he did a bit of everything.
I think he was a player who could kind of sub in wherever and do a job that was being asked of him. So I think that makes him underrated in my mind.
That's a good answer. I like that.
So that
was your gut answer?
That was my gut answer, yes.
Let's hear your more well thought out answer as well. Because that sounded pretty well thought out to me.
Thank you. My well thought out answer was Jay DeMerit. Because Jay DeMerit is a guy who anchored the backline of the 2009 Confederations Cup, anchored the backline of the 2010 World Cup, and then did not get a single call-up under Jurgen Klinsmann. So only 25 caps for a guy who played a lot of Premier League and championship games. It felt like he should have gotten more caps, and he's one who I think because it's been such like a long time since we thought about him regularly, it's one that easily fades. But he was such a key player for that defense.
Do you think he was celebrated at the time? Remember the Jay DeMerit story, and we were all very pro Jay DeMerit at the time. So I think it's more short-lived than underrated.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. You're right. Or just that he kind of just stopped. I think it's because he stopped getting call-ups that to me it became this like, why aren't we looking at this guy? Like he's very good. And then I guess maybe it's like misrated, like inaccurately rated as opposed to underrated.
I think I'd go with your gut.
All right.
there's also, I mean, specifically with Jay DeMerit, it's not like anybody on that defensive back line at the 2010 World Cup was like a spring chicken. And Jurgen Klinsmann came in specifically and being like, we're going to come in and we're going to introduce some young talent. We're going to introduce some attacking. And, we had all the things with like some possession and style and all this stuff that Jurgen Klinsmann promised to do. But one of the things you have to do is you have to cycle out defenders, and that's just the nature of the beast. At some point, everybody retires. Even you, DeMarcus Beasley. I'm watching you.
Not yet, but
at one of these point in time.
Also on my list.
Also, that's fair. That's fair.
That's my other big one.
He's the only one that's made to 4 World Cups.
I mean, that's a good reason right there. But
should Landon Donovan have made it to 4 World Cups?
Probably.
Yeah, but
DMB is a big one for me because he's one who like we don't hear from him for a while, and then he scores that amazing goal, and everybody's like, oh, he's never going to retire, and there are all those jokes. But it's easy to forget how like big of a career he's had. Like I said earlier that Louis van Gaal was going to come back up. Actual sentence about DeMarcus Beasley. PSV manager Gus Hiddink brought Beasley in as the successor to Arjen Robben. Like, we forget those things. We forget that he played in a Champions League semifinal, like in 2005, I think it was. Whenever Liverpool ended up beating Milan in the final, they lost to Milan on aggregate scoreline. So PSV could have easily been in a Champions League final with DeMarcus Beasley starting. And that's a thing that I think we forget about because now it's easy to talk about, oh, he's this guy who's never going to retire, and he's and it's not
for
even
a long time he was the guy that no one wanted to play left back.
Exactly.
But kind of was the best option at left back.
But I feel like he's like I don't know how to explain this, but he's like an anecdotal player where there's like all these like, oh, he scored that amazing goal, or like he pops up and is a character guy in the first Bruce Arena camp. But maybe it's because we don't watch as much Houston or don't watch as much MLS in like the last years, but it just feels like a player that we kind of overlook until he does something big.
Yeah.
But when you look at the kind of longevity of his career and what he's done within it, he's a player that I feel like is kind of underrated.
All right, that's 3 answers from you.
All right, I'm done now.
I want to get the Baron's answer. Who's
By the
your
way,
most
I still have one more.
underrated player of the last decade?
All right, I have a deep cut that if we're looking at last decade and saying like, all right, 2008, 2009 to now, specifically, he didn't. I'll say this: he didn't accomplish that much with the United States men's national team.
All right, you really selling
He
it.
appeared in one World Cup, but his club record is kind of nuts when you look at it. The amount of positions he played, the amount of time he played, and winning a really good amount of trophies is Jose Gringo Torres.
That's
All
fair.
right.
That's
I didn't see that one coming.
No,
I thought it was somebody else.
And I think that Jose Torres suffered a lot in the United States men's national team camp from managers not really knowing that much what to do with him per se. He was this interesting character because he was this guy that played central midfield. He wasn't quite a creative attacking midfielder. He wasn't quite number 8, and at the time, Bob Bradley was the one who was giving him minutes for the United States men's national team, and Bob Bradley was flirting with this kind of empty bucket midfield style, and Jose Torres definitely didn't fit that, but he had this ability about him that not many other U.S. players did at the time, especially in midfield. He had a little bit more culture to him. He had a little bit more assuredness and confidence in his touch and his pass. It's kind of like the first time I saw like Darlington Nagbe play with the United States men's national team, and for all the players' faults, and maybe you don't work out as well with a certain team for whatever reason, but you come in and you're just like, you watch him play and you say, wow, this is something different. Like, who's this guy? Like, what's going on here? Jose Torres with Tigres, primarily in Liga MX, won crazy trophies, won a ton of stuff, playing central midfield, transitioning to defensive midfield, transitioning then to left back for Tigres, and playing for Tigres well into his 30s. Gringo Torres had a very, very quietly super successful club career in Mexico that we just don't talk about very much because he didn't do a ton for the United States men's national team.
He's kind of like the Alfredo Morales of a few years ago, like someone who was with the team and then just stopped getting selected for whatever reason, so we all lose interest in his club career.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I
think Jurgen Klinsmann might have called him up for.
He definitely played for Klinsmann
He
a few times.
He played against Turkey in Philly.
Yeah,
because I remember, or at least he was in that squad. Because we were there that game. I remember that one fondly.
All right, I'm itching to get to my answers. I know you've got one more. I actually think it's not the satisfactory answer, but the correct answer is Michael Bradley.
Okay.
Because when you think of how many people just think that he absolutely sucks and he's terrible, that makes him the most underrated US men's national team player of the last decade.
You mean my entire Twitter feed? Continue.
Yep.
So there's one answer. Yeah. That's not really in the spirit of the question, but I actually think it's the correct technical
it's one
answer.
that I went back and forth on, but it's a strange one because I feel like he's not, even with everybody disliking him, it's not underrating him. It's sort of actively disliking him versus appreciating him, I guess. And so I really did have this level of I don't know if that makes him underrated or not.
And there was also that point in time when it was 2012, 2013 when Michael Bradley was playing for Roma, and he had a couple of performances for the United States men's national team, even if it was just in friendly stuff, where it was Michael Bradley actually could be it.
Apex Predator.
He could be the guy. I always remember seeing that goal that he scored in a random friendly against Scotland, whereas this volley that he takes from 20 yards out, he takes it with the outside of his right foot. Jermaine Jones hits the deck in front of him to get out of the way. And it's this stupid swerve and goes right into the top corner. And everybody was like freaking out, and everybody was just like, Michael Bradley is it.
Do you know what? I think you just gave me the best possible counterpoint, which is that there was a time when everybody rated Michael Bradley as easily our best central midfielder. So maybe then it's not fair to say he's the most underrated player.
It really wasn't until till Brazil World Cup, till 2014.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the tide turned on him.
And he had that specifically. The moment that I remember that a lot of people got on him about was the end of the Portugal game.
Yeah, I remember that we were like pouring beers instead of watching the game.
Yeah,
and people walking.
We did rewatch the game.
Yeah, we did, but people walking by afterwards were like, Michael Bradley gave away the game, and like, oh my, and so we had that idea because we hadn't really been able to see it. And then we went back, like, waiting for that moment, and we were like, that was it? Like, that was the one where he was, somebody else lost the ball, and he had to go try to chase it down?
Yeah, he ran 20 yards to try and get to a ball.
Or maybe it was, like, one that was, like, he definitely, it wasn't miscontrolled, but it was, like, driven at him, and he, like, tried to say, I forget what it was, but I remember it not being so obvious, but you had to find
it wasn't, like, egregiously bad. I'm pretty sure, as I remember it, he had the ball, and it was kind of like this, Portugal were just, like, sending wave after wave of attack forward. And the U.S. finally got the ball down, and Michael Bradley had the ball and was kind of running forward with it, and there really wasn't any options in front of him, per se. I think Omar Gonzalez, for some reason, was in front of him. I distinctly remember Omar Gonzalez getting into that game, like, right at the end of it, and then, like, there was, like, a breakaway, and Omar Gonzalez just takes off. I was like, what's going on here?
That sounds distinctly
and I just remember a lot of people being like, why don't you just boot it into the corner, which is like my favorite like American thing. Like, just boot it into the corner. I had a high school coach whenever the call was to like clear it at whatever cost, he called it Cleveland. So it was just you hear him yelling Cleveland, Cleveland on the side, and we're like, what does that mean? And he's just like, kick it to Cleveland, kick it as hard as you can. I'm like, okay, all right. But like I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, like that should have been it. And I think there were several reasons for Michael Bradley not having a great 2014 World Cup. But that was like
played too high for one thing, right?
Yeah. There was a lot of reasons.
Let's not get too set on Michael Bradley because I've got other underrated players. Kyle Beckerman was a player who was vilified for a long time. Everybody thinks he sucked, but he actually did a really important job doing the dirty work in defensive midfield that I think makes him underrated.
See, I disagree. I thought about him too. Chuck Klosterman has a whole chapter in one of his books about like bands that are accurately rated as opposed to being overrated or underrated.
I think he says like that. He's such a genius for coming up with that.
I know, right? But I think his joke was like the Beatles are considered the best band of all time, and they are, so it's accurately rated. Yeah, and so I think Kyle Beckerman used to be underrated, and I think now is accurately rated because I think
he did a reverse Bradley.
Yeah, because the 2014 World Cup, he became this like, he is the most important player. Like he is sitting deep, he is patrolling that midfield. He was. Men in Blazers had the whole like he's the best player in the world or whatever. We had him as Kyle Beckerman.
So he had his moments. So
I feel
he's not
like he's properly rated.
Fair. Okay, my apologies to Chuck Klosterman. How about Jermaine Jones?
You don't need to apologize to him.
I think we underrated the importance of Jermaine Jones. Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about his lack of positional discipline, maybe his passing, can he play with Bradley, etc. But I think a lot of the World Cup qualification campaign falling apart coincides with Jermaine Jones essentially getting older, getting a lot more injuries, not being selected anymore. And there was a certain I know it was almost a joke that Klinsmann kept talking about wanting the team to be nasty. I think Jones brought like a competitiveness and a nasty streak to the US for a good many years that kind of disappeared when he was no longer able to play. And suddenly that nasty spark was missing. So I think in a weird way we might have underrated the competitive edge he brought to teams.
Yeah, when you move to Los Angeles, you lose the competitive edge.
That's I mean, he aged out essentially, right?
Also
that's my final bid. Jermaine Jones for most underrated player of the last decade. Because we were never too celebratory of him, right? There were always questions about Jermaine Jones, and I think we missed him when he was gone.
I mean, we celebrated some of those goals, and we celebrated some of the all over the place performances that he would put in.
Okay,
there were. I mean, the last two people that you mentioned, Beckerman and Jones, were probably the two best American players on the field in 2014. In a lot of different ways, or at least I would say probably the most important to the team in like how they were playing, which was defending a lot of the time. But I feel like with Kyle Beckerman, kind of what Taylor said, like we came to a place where we're like, oh yes, he is good. With Jermaine Jones, I feel like Jermaine Jones is also accurately rated, but because like. That's mostly because of how wildly inconsistent his performances really were. Because he would have stretches like the World Cup and like some of these like what you said with like putting in work for qualification campaigns, and you think about that like really super long undefeated run that they had in the Hex for running up to. I think it was the year of like 2012. Like Josie scored in like 8 straight games or something like that. You had guys like that, and people were coming in, and I definitely think that Jermaine Jones was a big part of that. But also, Jermaine Jones has had so many U.S. games where he has been bad. Like, not like...
But that's my contention, is maybe he wasn't.
Not inoffensive, but bad. And my contention is maybe he was.
I guess we'll have to type about this.
I think that he's accurately rated just because for all like the really high points that he also had all those low points. And even if the argument is, oh, it was because Jermaine Jones and Michael Bradley can never figure out how to play together, that's still at some point on a little bit on the players too. Like if we can't figure out how to play together, we can't figure out these roles at all after so long of playing them together like that.
All right, Taylor, who's your final one?
Oh, I'll do it quick because I don't know if this counts because it's a while ago, but for me, a player that I always really enjoyed.
Is it in the last decade?
Yes, it is. It's Maurice Edu.
You need to make my list.
That's a good shout.
I go back to like that 2010 World Cup where Bob Bradley kept starting Ricardo Clark, and maybe I've exaggerated this, but I feel like it was a routine thing of starts Ricardo Clark, they don't look good, they concede early, Maurice Edu comes in, they find a way to get back into that game.
Yeah.
And that is my like memory of Maurice Edu, but I don't then remember him getting those consistent minutes after that, and then I don't think he ever became like a regular performer for the national team. But it's also Maurice Edu, who around that same time was like playing regularly for Rangers when that still was a bigger deal than it is now. And I remember him scoring the Old Firm Derby goal and like this. So it's like at club level, I remember being really excited about him. And then I remember coming out of that 2010 World Cup being like, I want Maurice Edu to start every game. But he still never felt like he got to that next level.
It's almost like along with Ricardo Clark, he became... people saw it as like the symptom of what they thought was the bad Bob Bradley thing of having too many defensive midfielders instead of maybe appreciating Mo Edu and Ricardo Clark for what they brought to the table.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So those are my answers.
There's a long list of underrated US men's national team players. I kind of feel like I got talked out of all of mine, but I'm okay with it. It was a good conversation.
Okay. I'm glad you're okay with it.
I'm pretending I'm okay.
I hope you're okay with doing an ad read now because we've got one more to do, and it's for Talisman Caps.
Oh, first, we just got to get Adam to sign the contract that he'll participate in the ad read, but does not expect to participate in the profits.
Do you actually have that contract?
I don't.
That was a long way to make a joke. Then
verbal contract?
Okay.
I accept.
There we go. Verbal contract accepted.
Beautiful.
Today's show is sponsored by Talisman Caps. You know all about Talisman Caps. They make great soccer gear for your head.
High-end, quality-made caps and gear to help you support and celebrate the football team you enjoy. They've got the curated jersey collection of the jerseys from throughout the years that are often very, very outstanding. But I do enjoy the hats. Adam is wearing a hat properly, is what I've learned, because my wife taught me how to wear a Talisman cap, which is basically get rid of the brim.
Brim.
Don't think of the brim, and then think of it as just a cap on your head, and how would you want that cap to look.
Yeah.
And if you do that when you put the Talisman cap on properly, then it like the brim sits up a little bit. You had it sitting exactly the way it's supposed to look.
What does she mean by get rid of the brim? Just imagine it's not there.
Don't like, because when I wear a hat, I wear the
imagine
brim low.
It's not here.
Yeah, so like imagine the brim's not there and look at it as just like an actual cap, and then you can make it fit your head the right way.
So you don't want it down here like with your eyebrows,
That's
so you look like
but I'm wrong. Yeah.
Like a little league baseball coach kind of thing, and then also don't wear it up here like you are either a trucker or Jesper Parnevik. That's a real deep cut.
That's a deep cut.
I feel like I'm out of my depth here. Who's Jesper Parnevik?
He's a golfer.
Okay.
But I'm glad Adam is here to accentuate what I'm talking about. More specifically, what my wife was talking about. But once I did that, I did get like 3 compliments on the dog walk. Like, oh, I like that hat, and I think it had to do with the adjustment.
Which one were you wearing?
I was wearing to be fair, it was the Pirlo hat. The Pirlo with the glass of wine hat.
So this is the thing that people might not know about Talisman Caps. They have a line of icons where it is things like Andrea Pirlo doing his midfield thing while swishing around a nice glass of wine.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's the Diego Maradona with a glass of beer. We asked Dustin, one of the owners of Talisman Caps, why they went glass of beer, and he's like, well, we didn't feel like it would be a good idea to put the other stuff on there.
No?
I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah. I think they should
like a LeBron James cloud of white.
I think they should have a Diego Maradona and Robbie Fowler like combination hat.
Like a Lady in the Tramp style, like they're sniffing together. I like that idea.
We should pitch all these ideas to Talisman.
Get at us, come on.
That should be a hat, and I'm really excited for that to be the case.
So you've got your icons. You've also got sort of caps representing clubs, right? Premier League clubs, MLS clubs, with really nice, cool graphics.
I feel like you've gotten us out of this.
That have been
the Robbie Fowler, Diego Maradona.
I am a professional.
There you go.
And I am trouble.
If you go to talismancaps.com, you can get 20% off. Use the discount code TOTALSOCCER20. Discount code TOTALSOCCER20 with a minimum purchase of $35 or more. But you can't really spend under $35 because that's the cost of one cap.
It is
so
indeed.
If you buy a cap, use the code TOTALSOCCER20, you'll get 20% off.
Talisman caps are the lifestyle streetwear gear that you can feel proud to wear both on and off the pitch. And thank you to Talisman for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you to Adam for helping me further explain how you're supposed to wear a hat. And thank you to Adam for helping us answer.
My mind is blown by the cap wearing thing.
And now we've got 2 more questions that will maybe further blow your mind.
Okay. Next one is from Phil Grooms. Phil Grooms says, it was a big relief to see how tactically adept Greg Berhalter was with the US men's national team in January. Cosign. But what will be the first thing to go wrong with Berhalter and why? Mm-hmm. And Phil also says, because it always goes wrong somehow for everyone.
I just see Taylor's stewing on this one.
Well, I kind of am, because I would like to know what you all think. We talked about this a little bit, but like, what do you think Phil means by things go wrong?
Well, name me one US national team coach that has left in a blaze of glory.
Well, I guess what I mean is, like, but literally there is no one. I think Alexander the Great won every single battle he ever fought. But that's pretty much the outlier. Like, everybody loses games, everybody has downturns in form. So I guess my question is, like, is that going wrong? If, like, they lose 3 in a row, but then they come back, is that it going wrong? Or is it like, this is not tenable, things are bad?
So I don't think it's like when he gets fired and everything's awful. I think it'll be more like, everyone thinks it's great right now, right? Because the tactics look great, the team look kind of exciting, they played nice football. But at some point...
That's such a good piece of evidence for how low that bar is. It's like, things seem okay, so it's great.
Things seem fine.
Right, but there was a general sense of optimism in January, right? But at some point with US national team coaches, as with most national team coaches, there's a point where we all get, like, media and fans and everybody gets frustrated with a thing of like, why is Berhalter doing this? Why isn't the team doing this instead? And I think what Phil is asking is, what do we suspect or what do we predict will be the thing that everybody gets frustrated with about a Greg Berhalter team? Does that help reframe it a little bit for you?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Are
you willing to answer it now?
I'm going to make it even more simplistic, and I'm going to say, like, what's the uh-oh moment?
Yeah,
when,
there you go.
Things just seem like they're going well, and then suddenly it's like, oh boy, we lost 4-0 to that team? Like, uh-oh. And I would say, I think the 2 things I could see would be when we go up against an opponent that has researched the U.S. a little bit and is playing a very high-pressing system, because then suddenly I could see Nick Lima drifting into central midfield and not being ready for somebody to be right on him right away and trying to win that ball back. It feels like that could lead to lots of turnovers and lots of vulnerabilities for the United States that could easily be exposed. Similarly, I feel like if they continue to try to play out of the back, or that becomes a hallmark of the U.S., inevitably you face opponents who are prepared for that. And then if you try to force that and it doesn't go well, or you don't have the technical ability to be able to play out of that pressure, that's where I could see the United States taking a 4-0 L, and suddenly things don't look as good.
So I would go the other way and say I think that the first thing people will get frustrated with is the sort of heavy possession. This whole positional play thing where the thing is we have the ball and we're going to try and move the opposition out and we're going to open something up and make something happen. I can see maybe a game in CONCACAF where we come up against a really disciplined opponent and we fail to break a team down. And suddenly people are asking, why don't we just start crossing the ball into the box? You know what I mean? Why don't we go more direct? And maybe people get sick of the possession, if that makes sense.
I feel like I should yes and you, but
you should.
But the thing is, that would be one game. And to me, that's not enough to.
What if that happens consistently, right? Suddenly, if we find that the US being a more possession-oriented team, people could start saying, "Oh, they don't have the guts of the old days where we used to go and fight and go direct, and we would get Alan Gordon's head on the end of a ball instead of trying to play all this nice soccer." I could see that potentially being a thing.
Okay,
I've got a second thing. I think the system comes first with Greg Berhalter, right? I can see a definite moment where there is a player that is absolutely on fire, in Europe or in MLS, and everybody's like, "Oh, this kid should play for the United States." And Greg Berhalter looks at him and says, "He just doesn't fit the system. He doesn't work for my style." And then vice versa, there'll be a player that Berhalter thinks fits the system, fits the style, who nobody likes watching. Like, could be Corey Baird, for example.
I mean, I feel like there are two obvious answers there.
Right. Well, yes. Well, maybe Will Trapp, Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, something like that.
Gyasi Zardes is the answer.
Yeah. So and that could happen as well. That could be where things go wrong. Could be the moment.
But since Adam said that he was saying that too, I say good answer, Adam.
I definitely think there's going to be times in the next like year or two, especially when we have this like. We have a couple of years of this like kind of like gap ramp where we really want people like Josh Sargent to like be able to step up and take over, but there is no guarantee that is going to happen. And we don't have a guarantee that those players that are that age are going to be able to step up in the way that we want them to step up. We don't know if we're going to be going into like a World Cup qualifier and we can rely on somebody like Josh Sargent or Tim Weah to come through and really do that for us. And people are going to complain because Greg Berhalter is going to see that and say, my best chance of getting goals and points and therefore advancing is starting Josie Altidore. And people are going to be pissed.
Like CONCACAF rough and ready. CONCACAF seasoned Josie Altidore.
We have already seen this. We've already seen this in his only 2 games that he has coached. He started Gyasi Zardes up top both times. And everybody wanted to see Christian Ramirez more. Everybody wanted to see Jeremy Obobase more. Like I can almost guarantee that. Mm-hmm. Like everybody or the majority of U.S. fans would have preferred to see Ramirez or Obobase start up top one of those games rather than see Zardes start up top both games.
Mm-hmm. But Zardes fit the system and knew the system, right?
Zardes definitely knew the system. Yeah. Like he's been playing in it. And
it's just
there's something
putting the ball in the
said,
back of the net system.
Yeah,
he wasn't so good in those games.
Yeah. What's funny about those 2 games though is that like Gyasi Zardes did, especially versus Costa Rica. I felt like Gyasi Zardes was touching the ball and connecting like way more passes than he ever did in Columbus. And he even had a couple of like pretty decent moments in possession against Costa Rica in that first half when the U.S. wasn't able to get much going, and you had Corey Baird doing whatever he was doing out on the wing, and it felt like very disjointed. And Costa Rica did press more, and they caught us out a couple of times in that Nick Lima pushing up a little bit kind of scenario. And eventually, I mean, one of the things that we did that broke that was, all right, now we're going to go long. Like we're going to go long with this. And you saw,
I forgot they did do that a couple of times.
And you saw
maybe Alan Gordon will make a comeback.
Gyasi Zardes nodding the ball off, or specifically what led to
the Zach Steffen goal kick and
Zach Steffen goal kick. Christian Ramirez nods it back. Yeah. We take it in for a goal.
I feel like we are Gyasi Zardes splaining now, or like Bobby Wood splaining, where it becomes this like, but he did have a couple good touches in there.
Yeah,
like,
no, but
you go down that road of like, well, he's actually better than you think. Wow, there's like I think you all have stumbled, or like you guys are on the right track, which is that there will come that time when there are going to be the people doing the Michael Bradley thing we've already done of like, oh no, but he does this and he does that and he does this, and then the response is like, yeah, but he doesn't score goals. We need somebody who scores goals. This Andrea Novakovic is scoring goals in the Eredivisie. Why isn't he getting looks?
Yeah.
And that's like a bad example, but you see what I'm getting at, which is there's going to be that time when there's going to be a player who's in form, who's scoring goals, who seems like they should be in the team, but they don't do it the way Greg Berhalter needs them to, and so that becomes an easy thing to be like he's relying on this forward who's not as good as this guy, and when you have that sort of split, that's when it starts to go south.
So there's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
All right, you ready for one more question?
I would say the thing that I'm optimistic about is that I think because like Greg Berhalter doesn't have, in my mind, like he has things that he wants to do, he has a style he wants to play, but it's not this like we have to do it this way and I have to. It's not sorry ball. He has to have this guy who does this role, and so I'm having a hard time really even thinking of a situation where like we're talking about Gyasi Zardes, but that's like a January camp player. And like Andrea Novakovic, no one is out there. I feel like there are very few Novakovic stands. Like there's not, you don't have that yet.
Not yet.
So that feels far off in the distance. That feels like a problem for another day.
I wrote him, but
there we go.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that even from, I mean, like one of the big things that people were talking about when you were talking about, oh, how does Berhalter's system fit the U.S. and looking at his stuff that he was doing with Columbus was, well, the U.S. doesn't have a Federico Higuain character. Like, how do you do that? And then immediately he comes in and be like, oh, well, we're going to have 2 number 10s. Or like, oh, we haven't seen, okay, oh, that's, you're going to do it like that, huh? Okay. All right.
So let's just cross our fingers that Berhalter has all the answers.
That's realistic.
Forever.
That's a realistic thing to hope
and
for.
Nothing ever goes wrong.
Or we could just say maybe it's a better idea to recognize that there's going to be downturns in form, and maybe to try to learn from those is the better way to approach it rather than this is not working. let's just burn the village.
Look at you, all rational.
I try to be.
Ready for the final question?
Sure.
It is from Sagar Suramagiri. Sagar says, in most sports, the improvements in sports medicine have resulted in athletes staying in their prime far into their late 30s or just much longer than in the past. And the examples Sagar gives are Roger Federer, who I believe is 37 and still obviously a contender for number one. Tom Brady, who is 100? No, how old's Tom Brady? 41. LeBron James, who is 34, and as far as I'm aware, is still good at basketball, even if the Lakers aren't. Sagar says, I might be wrong or unaware, but I can't find similar examples in soccer. Soccer players still seem to be losing their peak fitness by 33 to 35. Maybe Cristiano Ronaldo will be an exception. Sagar asks, why is this? Has soccer sports medicine not evolved, or are there other mitigating factors? Wow, there's a lot in this question.
There is, and I would kind of like go at the question for a moment.
Go for it.
Because I would say I think you have to draw a line between average age and the age of star players. Because Sagar is like pointing out star players who have more money can get more treatments. Kobe Bryant can fly to Germany and have a weird medical procedure, and suddenly he comes back and he's fully fit and ready to go.
Yeah.
So you have those players who I would consider outliers. But if you look at, I think the average retirement age of the NBA from like the one site I found is 34 or 35. That's about what we're talking about. The NFL, it's closer to 30, 29 maybe. So I think like if you have specific cases where maybe some players are lasting longer, but I still think if you're looking at averages, it tends to be mid-30s.
Maybe a good example is so Roger Federer, obviously he's still going strong at 37. Andy Murray, I'm not sure how old he is, but he just had a hip replacement.
Yeah.
And he's not doing so well. He'll probably end up retiring. Yeah. So just because one person does it, so maybe you're sort of cherry picking the data.
I would also just say like not a lot of like body checking in tennis, unless it's radically changed since
never
last
played
I
me.
played. Exactly. We've gone Thunderdome rules now in Wimbledon. All right.
So we're getting into something here that soccer is more of a contact sport than tennis. Definitely than basketball, because I know I got called for a lot of fouls when I tried to play basketball. I played it soccer style, and you can't do a lot of that stuff, it turns out. And then NFL stuff is weird, right? Because obviously there's big contacts, but it's maybe less frequent than the constant knocks you get in soccer. And you do have a line of big guys in front of you.
I mean, I would rather take the knocks you take in soccer than the knocks you take in football.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would say that for sure.
Absolutely.
Would you say they are hard knocks?
I would not, because I will not accommodate that joke.
Especially because
you found it as amazingly funny.
Would you say that you went to school for them?
You should both feel bad about yourself.
Okay, let me rephrase this then. Tom Brady at 41 just won the Super Bowl.
He certainly did.
He certainly did. So
the worst game ever. I know this is a soccer podcast. The worst game I've ever witnessed.
I had a great time by not watching it.
It is a good example of what happens when you have a team that nobody likes except for people from Boston versus a team that no one cares about. It's not great. It doesn't turn out to be a great game.
But Tom Brady at 41 just won the Super Bowl. As far as I can tell, being not an NFL watcher, is the sort of star player and the fulcrum of that team. Is it even possible for a soccer player at 41 to do that same thing?
I'm not trying to be like difficult here, but you could say that. But then, like, Julian Edelman is the MVP of the Super Bowl. Like, so yes, he is a star player, but there are lots of other players who make that system work.
Okay,
and I say that just to say that like he is a player who is lasting very long, but it is not as though he alone is the one who's running that ball in and throwing it to himself the way Allen Iverson allegedly did.
But could you have a 41-year-old like distributive midfielder or a 41-year-old striker who the rest of the team is then just built around protecting him and serving him?
His name's Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, I think that is the one that I would say.
You think it looks like happening?
Yes. I don't even know how to say this. I'm not going to say it because it'll get us. I don't know. He's got active lawyers. I'm not trying to get sued, but that man has a disposition and personality that I think lends itself to being obsessed with perfection and being the best. And I think when you have that, I think Tom Brady has the same. I think that's why Tom Brady is always working to make sure he stays at that level. I think Cristiano Ronaldo is going to do the same thing. So yeah, I think Cristiano Ronaldo could easily play till he's like 39.
There's also kind of like if we're looking at differences in the sports. Because a lot of the superstars, especially if you're looking at NFL, a lot of the superstars that are like old guys, upper 30s, pushing into 40, those guys are quarterbacks.
Yep.
It's not the linebackers. It's not It's not the wide receivers. It's the quarterbacks.
Kickers,
so place kickers. Shouts out to the place kickers. Shouts out to all the place kickers that were soccer stars in high school and took an easy contract.
Why is that? Because I feel like quarterbacks get hit a lot, right?
Quarterbacks do not get hit a lot. I mean, compared to everybody else on the field, no. Yeah. Because basically on every play, every person has to block someone. Almost every play, everybody is coming into contact at least one time with somebody else, regardless of whether you get the ball or not, except for quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Because a quarterback is the only person who, on the vast majority of plays, the very first motion that he does is go away from the opposing team, as opposed to everybody else, which is going forward.
Okay, so you get protected.
Yeah, I mean, and in practice,
I did say earlier, there's a line of big guys in front of you, right?
I might be wrong, but I believe, quarterback is one of the few positions where in practice, if you put on a red shirt, it means you don't get hit.
Yeah.
I think wide receivers don't get that luxury nearly as much.
I'm going to do that next Tuesday at our practice.
I think you should go for it. We'll see how that works
yeah.
out. But, and to your point, they're not getting hit nearly as often, but I also think, even if they are still getting knocked down, Tom Brady takes plenty of hits, but it's also that Tom Brady's game was never built on speed. I've never thought of him as a particularly fast player. He's a big dude. He can definitely sneak the ball. But he is staying in the pocket, looking for protection, throwing the ball away if he's about to get hit. And I think that differs from a Michael Vick who's scrambling. I mean, remember Robert Griffin III? Remember RG3? Remember how great he was for that 1 year? And then now, meh? I think that's the way it goes. So there are certain players like Zlatan who is not going to be that fast. Harry Kane, his game is not built on speed.
But Zlatan's still going to get hit as well, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have Zlatan receive the ball up front. He sees someone coming for him. Say he sees Ikapara coming for him. Yeah. He's playing Minnesota. He can't just be like, I'm just going to kick this away.
That's true.
we also can't ignore how this question very intentionally disparages our older goalies out there.
Yeah.
Gianluigi Buffon, this recent Champions League games, notwithstanding. If you look, here's how this. We're going back to the 2014 World Cup for the United States men's national team. Who was the one person who put in, internationally speaking, what people thought was a star performance? Tim Howard.
Yeah.
38 years old at the time. Right? 38, 37, something like that?
Is that what he was?
He was that old. He was that old when he did that.
No, he was not that old.
Be that
36.
Old.
2014
at least 36. At least 36.
2014 was 5 years ago, right?
At least 36.
Well, here's the thing.
At least 36.
So goalkeepers, I think, it's a similar thing. You don't take as much. Daryl's looking it up. But I would say this, specifically about Tom Brady. Wait, Daryl, before you look it up.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I would say, another key thing, and I know that, Tom Brady played high school, he played college, but it's worth noting that when he first became a regular starter, when Drew Bledsoe gets hurt in the third game of the season, Tom Brady was 24 years old. So he is now 41. He's played 17 years as a consistent professional starter.
Right.
Christian Pulisic started playing professional soccer when he was 17 years old.
Yeah.
So that same 17-year career, he's 34. So I think it is also the case that I think soccer players, especially professional soccer players, are starting at a much younger age compared to if you're playing college football. You're probably 21, 22, maybe 23 when you get drafted, and then there's no guarantee that you're going to be a starter right away. So
not dissimilar with tennis. I looked up Federer won his first title at 22.
Okay,
right?
So
Kylian Mbappe is winning World Cups much younger.
So I think the youth or the young age of soccer players when they're starting, and I think that's a somewhat recent. In the last 10 years or so change that I remember being pumped when they're starting a 23-year-old. That's a big deal. And now it's they've got a 16-year-old in their starting lineup. So that's one thing. But then I would also say in terms of the duration and how long people can play, I think about a player like Scott Parker as is a good example to me of a player.
He's the Fulham coach, right?
Yeah, there you go. He retired. Is he the coach now?
Yeah,
I forgot.
He took over for Ranieri.
I forgot that happened. But he retired at 36, so that's about the age we're talking about in terms of the average age of retirement. First pro game at 16, and it's worth noting, and this is why I bring him up, is to say that he played at multiple levels. Because he played in the Premier League, but he played plenty of games in the championship for different clubs. And that's another thing, is that I think a lot of American sports, if you're in the NBA, you're in the NBA. If you're not in the NBA, you're maybe in the D League or maybe you're in Europe, but primarily that's that league. And I think if you're then, we all know, if you're playing in the championship, it's a slog. It's really difficult. It's physical. You're getting knocked around a lot more. And I think because you have the variety of leagues, that also factors into why maybe you have not as much longevity in the long run. Because if you're starting out as a 17-year-old playing in the championship or in a more physical league, that might knock you back a little bit.
The other thing here is Ryan Giggs, who played in the Premier League at the age of 40. Francesco Totti, who played in Serie A at the age of 40. Like they maybe weren't at the peak of their powers, but they were still playing for big clubs in top flight. So it is possible to have this sort of similar, like, freakish longevity.
And it can't be said that right now Tom Brady or LeBron James are playing at the peak of their powers because they're not.
This is true.
So I don't know that with any confidence, but if two American sports fans say that,
absolutely.
I will believe you.
Tom Brady performed it was probably his worst Super Bowl performance.
Yeah.
And he has plenty of them at this point for a sample size. Like it was just not good. LeBron James earlier this season in the NBA stated he was activating playoff mode a little bit earlier than expected.
Oh wow!
So that the Lakers could make the playoffs, and then the Lakers proceeded to lose the next 4 or 5 games after he said that to the press. They're still great players. They're still players that if any random person would be like, "Oh, would you take this person on your team?" Everybody would be like, "Yeah." Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'd definitely do that. But they're not also the same players that they were when they were 32.
Yeah,
they're not as good as that. And maybe they're slightly better off than like a Ryan Giggs or a Francesco Totti was at the twilight of their career as compared to them.
Giggs still winning Premier Leagues, right? At the end.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's just down to them not having the TB12 method and the copper underwear that Tom Brady is wearing. But I don't think that there is that necessarily big of a gap. And I certainly don't think that the sports science kind of medicine in soccer is lagging behind.
Do you remember when we all thought the Milan lab was doing all these things that we never thought were possible, and then everybody fell apart a little bit?
We just replaced the word possible with legal.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
For reference, Tim Howard just turned 40.
There we go.
Yeah.
So he was 35 and I don't know anything. Just so we're all clear out there.
I did appreciate your bargaining attempt.
I was like, he was 38.
And then,
he was 37.
And then
he was definitely at least 32.
he was 12?
born.
He's 12 years old. He's totally born.
Yeah.
He's a prenatal goalkeeper. And then this one is more my opinion, so I would happily be wrong, or I will accept being wrong. I won't happily be wrong. But I also think that there is more of a stigma around being old in soccer. That I think, if you have a team that's all 29-year-olds in hockey, I don't know if that's as big of a deal as it would be if a Champions League team where the average age was 29.
Yeah.
I think people would look at that and be like, "Oh, that's an old team." If you have a World Cup team and the average age is 29, people look at that as "Ooh, they don't have a lot of young blood."
Is there more pressure to keep refreshing in soccer?
I think so.
Adam talked about it earlier with we want Josh Sargent to be starting. And that always feels like a thing with the US, right? Is we always want the young players to be playing. I feel like everyone's excited about the young players coming through all the time. And that might be a soccer thing where we hype up the next generation more.
How long have you thought Karim Benzema was one of the best strikers around?
Long time.
You've thought that for a very long time. But how long has it felt okay, but Madrid are going to sign somebody else. They've got to bring in somebody new.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's that player can still be performing, but there comes that time when it's yeah, but they're 32. They need to get a 21-year-old in there.
And Vinicius Junior's a teenager, so
yeah. Well, in American sports, every single year you get a little bit of a reset.
Yeah.
The MLS Super Draft notwithstanding, soccer doesn't have drafts.
Yeah.
You are responsible for finding, developing, and replacing your own talent. Whereas in American sports, the whole college system has farmed it for you.
Yeah.
You just have to pick it. You just have to select the ones that you want.
Yeah, that's
and you literally every single sports team in America that's not MLS, and MLS does to an extent. It's just different. We know the complaints and the kind of the issues with the MLS Super Draft in general. But in terms of talent, all the other American sports leagues, you're walking out of a draft with anywhere from 3 to 10 new players that you can sign to contracts that are all in their early 20s. That are all in that kind of prime age where it's yes, we have new people. So it's constantly filtering through, as opposed to with soccer, if you have a team full of 29-year-olds, it's kind of okay, great, but how is your next generation getting into the team? How are they going to be prepared for stepping onto the field if it's if this is going to be what it is, unless you're a team that you can just afford to buy every single great player in their prime, which the vast majority of teams can't.
Yeah, I can think of like 5.
I got one final thing to say on this. I mentioned this to my friend Hugh today, and he made the point that sports medicine has advanced and prolonged players' careers. It's just that other players, you just wouldn't have heard about them playing because they would have got horrible injuries. So something like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's ACL tear wouldn't be so long ago that it'd just be over, right? In his mid-20s or late 20s, wherever Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is. Now it's like an ACL tear.
Don't put that thing in a cast. It's not a great idea.
And that stuff is really common in soccer, right? ACL, MCL, a lot of ligament trouble because of the way soccer works, like contact and movement and all that. And so sports medicine has advanced where multiple careers are saved by advances in sports medicine.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and that I feel like it was Adrian Peterson. Like he tore his ACL and then was back within like 6 months or like 8 months or something like that. Like,
that was weird.
Yeah, it used to be. Yeah, well, who knows about that one? Adrian Peterson, interesting fella. But like, yeah, that's a very good point. That there's stuff that people can recover from that much faster, and then you get some horse placenta and you're good to go.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that works.
Oh no, was it when Diego Costa played 15 minutes of the Champions League final?
It actually was.
Yes,
I was like, oh, that's useless.
But before that, you were on the fence about horse placenta.
Yeah,
being the cure-all?
I wanted to see the evidence.
All right.
Yeah.
Just a little placenta milkshake. Never hurt nobody.
God.
All right, on that note, we should end the question segment. It's worth reminding people, if you subscribe to the Total Soccer Show at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer at least one question per month on the Total Soccer Show. And we're back to doing that now that I'm back more regularly in studio. Thanks to all that horse placenta that I drank.
All you all have done, I apologize for what I'm about to say, all you have done is reminded me of the Michael Scott line of when he's drinking wine. I think it's Michael Scott is drinking wine. It says, it's got a bit of an oaky afterbirth, don't you think? You're welcome. You're welcome for that.
And if you do want to subscribe, the URL is totalsoccershow.com/join.
You could join at any level, and you'll be assigned a scout, which is what we're going to get to right now, because we got many scouting reports to get to. We're definitely not going to clear them all up on today's episode, but we will get to it more than a few.
And we've got Snaves in on the scouting reports. Okay, what's the order, Tyler? How do you want to do this around the table?
I think Snaves needs to go first.
You think he needs to go first? Okay. What's happening first?
All right, first, we have Jesse Frankel, who is scouting Matteo Retaccio, which I assume is how you pronounce that.
So far, so good.
I say so.
A 17-year-old Italian-American midfielder that's playing for Liverpool. Retaccio is one of 3 foreign-based players called into the first U.S. U18 training camp of the new year. Woo. More recently, he played the entire match in the Liverpool U18's 7-2 win over the Blackburn U18s this past Saturday.
All right. Go on, Retaccio.
And maybe better luck next time, Blackburn?
Yeah.
All right.
Bless up.
Tim Foss is scouting Marlon Vargas, the 18-year-old American attacker, for Tacoma Defiance. Do you know that's the new name for Seattle Sounders 2?
I was wondering about that.
S2 are now Tacoma Defiance, yeah. Tim Foss says Marlon Vargas was also called into that U18 camp and will soon be playing his second season for Tacoma, this time in the USL Championship.
Rebrands, baby.
Yeah.
Rebrands.
Is the US U18 team like the only youth team with a coach right now?
The U20s have one.
The U20s have one? Yeah, it's tap.
That might be it. Oh, boy. Anurag Anjaria, scouting Andrea Novakovic, 22-year-old American striker for Fortuna Sittard.
Nice roll on that R.
Thank you, my friend. I try. Despite recording a measly 27 touches over 90 minutes, Novakovic still scored his 6th league goal over the weekend against AZ Alkmaar. He launched a driven shot from the top of the 18 that was helped into the net by a hefty deflection.
Novakovic keeps scoring.
He does.
Call him up, Berhalter. I'm getting mad already.
I'm very excited for this next scouting report, speaking of hefty deflections.
Ryan Downey, scouting Zion Jones, erstwhile of Atlanta United's academy, I believe. 18-year-old American left winger for Schalke. Zion scored the lone goal.
Means. Used to be. Thank you.
It's a writer word. Okay. Zion scored the lone goal in Schalke's U19 0-1 win over MSV Duisburg. Though he has looked dangerous this season, this goal was a case of him being in the right place at the right time. A driven cross ricocheted off of his groin, and his celebration quickly turned to agony.
I've got to see the footage of this now.
I did not look it up.
Todd Brannan is scouting Cameron Carter-Vickers, the 21-year-old American defender on loan at Swansea from Tottenham. Todd says CCV got a lot of praise for his performance in Swansea's 2-0 win over Bolton. He was dominant in the air, was 100% on his tackles, had 94% passing accuracy, and got his best who scored rating of the season. That said, it should be noted that Bolton went to 10 men in the 43rd minute and finished with 9 after a second sending off in the 73rd. You can only beat what's in front of you, CCV.
There we go.
Go get him.
Mazikeen Wagner scouting Andre Onana, the 22-year-old Cameroonian goalkeeper for Ajax that Daryl doesn't rate.
Why are you starting rumors?
Because when we did our draft of African players, you chose somebody else in goal over him. I chose Andre Onana.
You just chose him first. Doesn't mean I don't rate him.
No, I know you chose somebody else. But like at the time, I think you chose Vincent Nyama, maybe at a time when that decision made sense. This was years and years ago. Either way, you don't think he's very
Please
good.
continue with the scouting report.
Andre Onana had a lights-out performance at the Bernabeu on Tuesday and helped his Ajax side complete a shock 4-1 Champions League win that sends them into the quarterfinal for the first time in 20 years. Ooh. His performance in that game also silenced Real Madrid fans and racist English tabloids who had previously mocked Onana for tripping on a beer cup thrown at him by rival fans in Amsterdam.
All right.
Anytime you can silence Real Madrid fans and racist English tabloids, that's a good game.
I mean, yeah, I think so.
No complaints.
Did you see I know you all don't love them quite as much as I do, but did you see the Pogba-Lukaku celebration yesterday?
Yes.
That made me very happy.
Oh, yes.
Because I guess The Sun had been writing a bunch of stuff about Lukaku and how he wasn't very good, and so their celebration was the camera just panned to Lukaku and he was pretending to write stuff, and then he just looked at the camera and gave it the quiet face, and I enjoyed it immensely.
There was also when Rashford scored that penalty right at the end of the game, Lukaku kind of wheeled around and for like a split second was celebrating right in Angel Di Maria's face, and I was like, ooh, spicy.
I enjoyed that too. It made me very happy.
Yikes. All right. Zach Lippert is scouting Izzy Brown, a 22-year-old English attacker on loan at Leeds from Chelsea. Izzy made his first team appearance in 421 days following his ACL tear and hamstring injury.
Fast.
Yeah, it's not always fast.
No, but he could have been over.
Yeah,
he's back. That's what's important.
He got 10 minutes against QPR, during which time he put in 2 yellow card-worthy tackles. He was only booked once, though, but his manager still said of his performance, too much enthusiasm and not enough skill.
Ooh, that's a harsh review.
Yeah.
That's a harsh review. Guy Yedwab is scouting Serge Gnabry, the 23-year-old German wide forward for Bayern Munich. Guy says Gnabry signed a new four-year deal, tying him to Bayern through 2024. That this contract extension was signed on only half a season's performance shows that Gnabry has already met expectations as a successor to Arjen Robben. That means he's the new DeMarcus Beasley.
There we go. That's what I was hoping you'd go with. Well done, my friend. Holly Barton scouting Keaton Parks, the 21-year-old American midfielder on loan at NYC FC from Benfica. Parks made his MLS debut against Orlando, subbing on in the 88th minute with his first name on the back of his jersey.
He's been doing that for a while, right?
As you do. I wonder who he possibly could have subbed on for. Adam?
Tom Gaffney scouting James Sands. 18-year-old American midfielder for NYCFC. I must say, even before I read this, I love James Sands, and I think James Sands is like a good shout to be like a surprise U.S. breakthrough this year.
Would you say he's the most underrated player in the pool of the last 10 years?
Of the next 10 years.
You know, what can you say? Tom assumed Sands would start on the bench for NYCFC's opener and was very pleased to see him included in the starting 11. James played a very strong defensive game despite the 2-2 scoreline and moved the ball safely under constant pressure by an Orlando side which dominated possession. He was subbed in the 88th minute after a tackle in which he appeared to hyperextend his knee but was able to walk off under his own power. It was a good game. He had a really good game.
I also enjoyed Tom Gaffney's, this was an abbreviated scouting report from what he said in, but it was a whole thing where he checked the substitute list to see if James Sands was there and was super disappointed. He was like, no more minutes for him, and then realized that he was starting and was overjoyed. There was much rejoicing.
Oh, speaking of rejoicing, Ben Richards is scouting Efrain Alvarez, the 16-year-old Mexican-American midfielder for the LA Galaxy.
I feel like it was meant to be that this falls to you to read.
Ben says, it took 60 minutes for Guillermo Barros-Schelotto to prove that his off-season talk of playing the kids this season wasn't all hot air when he brought 16-year-old Efrain Alvarez on for his MLS debut with the Galaxy down 1-0 to the Chicago Fire. It took Efra 8 minutes to reward his coach's faith when he cut past the Fire's Alexander Katai just outside the penalty area, moved towards the end line and lifted a floated ball with the outside of his left foot to the front of goal for Daniel Steres to head home. Not much later, Efra played a part in the winning goal when he nodded a long throw down to Chris Pontius, whose strike came off the crossbar before the rebound was headed home by Zlatan, who was previously quoted as proclaiming Alvarez in MLS the best 16-year-old that exists today.
He exists. He certainly does.
I feel like I was reading some Dostoevsky while I was reading that scouting report. It's like some drama.
It was very dramatic. I did want to ask, I did not read the full Berhalter quotes. What did Berhalter say about Efrain Alvarez?
He basically just said, "We'll keep an eye on him, and like if he hits the levels we expect him to, then he'll have a future with the team or something like that." It was kind of very, very vague.
Yeah, it felt like he was more talking about like there was at one point he was saying something about like we want to create an environment where people like Efrain Alvarez are comfortable coming in and being there, and it seemed very much in the general side of things and not like, I'm blowing up his texts right now kind of deal.
And it seemed more to err on the side of the thing that I think I've heard Tab Ramos say, and I'm not a big fan of, is that basically we want players to choose us, which puts all the onus on the player who's a dual national, so literally can't choose because it's just like there's two competing forces pulling you in two opposite directions. You need help from one side or the other to pull you towards them, right? So it feels to me like US soccer is just waiting for kids to drift towards them when what's going to happen is Mexico's going to step in and just nudge them in their direction.
Maybe that is also the answer to how Greg Berhalter's tenure goes south, is if they
lose
a bunch of dual nationals, that would not look very good, especially if Efrain Alvarez and Jonathan Gonzalez end up starting. Not that Jonathan
in the
Gonzalez
Gold Cup final
is
this summer
is Berhalter's fault, but still, worrying signs. Less worrying signs, Michael Thompson scouting Chris Gloucester. Let's end on a happy one. 18-year-old American left back for Hanover. Well, it's mostly happy. Since the German winter break, Gloucester has played all 90 minutes for each of Hanover 2's last 3 matches. He also recently trained with the first team, but with Hanover currently 7 points deep in the relegation zone, a serious chance for first team minutes may still be a while away.
Oh.
But you know what? It's still a possibility.
Yeah. All right.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you to everybody for today's Scouting Report. If you'd like to join the Scouting Network, it is totalsoccershow.com/join.
That checks out.
All that remains to say is, Adam, we didn't properly introduce you as a writer for The Athletic Soccer.
Hey, I write for The Athletic Soccer.
We kind of assume that people just know about the Panic Rankings.
I mean, he was on the show like 2 weeks ago.
That's true.
Like people should know.
I've been on the show individually with Daryl and then individually also with Taylor. Now I'm on the show with both of you, so it feels like it's a nice like little dovetail.
There we go.
But yes,
so the hooligans are triple cowards then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool,
This is what we're deciding on. Cool. I write for The Athletic Soccer, and we are very appreciative of anybody that's wanting to come and read our stuff. We believe that we are both informed, incisive, and at even times funny. If you want to follow along with what we're doing,
George, are you George Qureshi? Is that what's happening right now?
George Qureshi will be very pleased with this pitch.
George he's got like a mic in his ear that George
I whip out some glasses and some pleated pants. If you want to follow along with The Athletic Soccer is doing, you can follow on Twitter at The Athletic Sccr, SCCR, or you can subscribe for I don't even know how much it is a month anymore because there's constantly deals being run on it.
I feel like George would be less happy with this part.
That's probably true. Sorry, George. Please invite me to the next thing that you were planning on inviting me to.
But we used to advertise The Athletic, and we still have subscriptions, right? We still read it. We still recommend it, even when they're not advertising, because you can read Adam's writing and some other people's as well.
And some other people.
All right.
And some other people.
Final thing
including
to say,
the person who's going to be on tomorrow's show.
Is
but
that
you can
right?
get to that later on.
Yes, Caitlin Murray will be on to talk US Men's National Team and the She Believes Cup.
There you go.
All right, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Snaves, the Baron von Snavington, thank you for taking the time.
Baron Lord von Snavington.
Excuse me, I
feel like it changes, but that's okay. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. You gotta slash